Yes, so Pratigya, the floor is yours. Please take over the session.
Thank you, Eric. I will need the hosting rights to be able to spotlight people.
Okay, you got it?
Okay,
I'll be right back. I
yes,
have to, there we go.
sure. A very good evening, morning, afternoon. Hi, hello to everybody from across the world. I'm Pratigya Haran and I'm welcoming you to the first session of the Storytelling for Adults at the 13th edition of the Chennai Storytelling Festival. We are really, really happy to have all of you here. And as you know, we have over 100 presenters, we have over 60 storytellings, we have regional languages of 6+ Indian languages where stories will be told. And there's lots happening across every single weekend of the Feb, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I hope you've booked your calendar and you've told everybody you have no time for the world because you're very, very busy attending the Chennai Storytelling Festival. And here we are, kickstarting the first session. Eric, are you recording it for me yet?
Yes, the session is being recorded.
Oh, perfect. All right. So we are already rolling here. And we have our first storyteller, Neeta Joshi. Let me just spotlight you, Neeta. Neeta Joshi is joining us from Gurgaon, India. Neeta, please fully introduce yourself and please share a story.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pratigya. So I'm Neeta Joshi, a performance storyteller from Gurgaon. And people also know me as Chip and Tails. So that's my social media handle name. And before starting today's session, I want to deeply thank Eric Miller, Pratigya, and the whole team of CSF for giving me this beautiful opportunity to be a part of this wonderful program. So a big thank to all of you. So this story that I'm going to perform today, it's a folk tale. So it's a folk tale from Central America. And the name of the story is The Man Who Became a Bird. So let's begin. So long time ago, in a small village, the village which was surrounded with dense forests, tall trees, beautiful wildlife, and cascading waterfall. And in that village, there lived a man named Thiong. And Thiong, he was always dissatisfied and always unhappy. He was never happy. And he often sat outside his house, his hut, small hut, sighing loudly and grumbling about his mundane life. Why I'm stuck with this in this house, in this small village? Why I had to work so hard, harvesting and planting crops every day? Why can't be that bird, like that bird who fly up in the sky, who's free from all the worries of the world, who is free from all the worries of this life? Pyong invade birds, who has the ability to soar high in the sky and who are free from all the worries, who are free from all the burdens on this earth. He wished to be a bird, and he longed to escape from his responsibility and discover what freedom truly means. So one day, after another restful day, when he wandered in the deep forest, he was wandering there, and soon he came across an old shaman. That shaman who was sitting under a massive tree. And that shaman, he wore a beautiful cloak adorned with all the feathers of all different kind. And his eyes were shining. As he knew all the secret, he knew the secret of the world. Theung approached him. "What troubles you, young man?" the old shaman asked in a very calm voice. "I hate my life. I hate my life. I don't want this life. I am stuck in this dull village, and I have to work so hard every day. I want to just escape from this life. I want to, I want to be that bird who fly up in the sky and who is free from all these worries, all this stress in this world, in this life." The old shaman, he said, "Ah, so you want to escape from your responsibility and you wish to be a bird. You want to be a bird. Are you sure you want that life? Remember, freedom is not as easy as it seems to be." Yes, I do. I'm sure. I'm very much sure." Hyong replied eagerly. And the shaman, he nodded his head. "Okay." And he handed Hyong a small flask that is filled with a strange liquid. "Drink this potion, this liquid, the next morning under the rising sun, and your wish will come true. But remember that freedom comes with the cost." And Hyung, he took that small flask and he barely listened the warning that the old shaman was giving him. And he quickly ran to his house and he was dreaming. He was very excited about the exciting life that is going to happen the next morning. He could hardly sleep. He was not able to sleep that night. He was very excited. The next morning, when the first rays of the sun touched the earth, and Theung opened that flask and he quickly drank the whole portion of that liquid. And soon his arms stretched into wings. His body shrank and feathers sprouted all over his body. And he was transformed into a bird, a beautiful and incredible falcon. And without hesitation, he leapt in the sky. He leapt high in the sky, and he felt that the winds rushing past him, and he was carrying them high, and he was lifting them higher and higher up in the sky. This is incredible. Young, he just thought, and this is the life. This is the life what he was dreaming of. And his heart was racing with excitement. And Theung, he marveled the world as he has never seen before. And he was singing that beautiful song. "पंछी बनूं उड़ के फिरूं मस्त गगन में, आज मैं आजाद हूँ दुनिया के चमन से, हिलोरी हिलोरी हिलो हिलो हिलोरी." And he was very happy. And for some days, he explored the whole sky, and he was playing with the winds. He was chasing the other birds. He was resting at the tall branch of the trees. He was very happy. This is the life that he had dreamed for a long time. But soon he realized that life of a bird, the challenges of the bird, is not easy. The life of the bird is not easy. Hunting for food is very hard. He has to take a very sharp and a fast chase to chase the birds. And sometimes he missed also. And the rainstorms that soaked his feather, leaving him cold and shivering. The hawks and the eagles, they chase him. In every moment, he has to work very hard to save himself from those animals. Soon he realized that that, that the life that he dreamed is not easy. It's not that pleased that it seems. And one evening when he was resting on the very top branch of a tree, and he perched on the high branch of a tree, he felt alone. He was tired. He was tired running after this branch, that branch. He was tired. He was feeling so alone. This is not the life that I have dreamed of. This is not that freedom that I was looking for a long time. He was not happy. One evening when he was sitting on the tallest branch of a tree, he overheard some birds. One bird was saying, "Today I saw a man who was planting seeds in the fields. And being after he had worked so hard, but still he left some grains for us to eat. Isn't that kind?" Then another bird chirped, "The life of the humans is very challenging, but still they nurture, they create, and they protect. And the life of the humans are not so bad at all also." After hearing this, Hyung's heart sank, and he goes back to his life when when he was when he was having laughter with his friends and sharing. He shared the meals with his family, the joy of working in the fields. He looked back to his life and he realized that the life that he had abandoned has its own joy and challenges, own joy and beauty. And then he quickly ran to the old shaman. And that old shaman, he knew that he will come back. And he asked, "Did you learn what you needed to learn, Hyung?" And Hyung said, "Yes, I do," in a very humbled and a very calm voice. I learned that freedom is not about escaping from your life, from the life that you're living, but embracing this joy and challenges. Please, please, I want to go back to my life. Please, please, I want to back. I'm being a back. I want to be a man again. And the old shaman, he smiled and he sprinkled some feathers on him. And soon, in a flash, he was transformed in a man. But this time, he was different. That man was different. Hyung was different because he was carrying the wisdom of the birds and the beauty of nature and the balance of life and the value of gratitude. And from that day onwards, he started living his life with a new perspective. He worked very hard and he enjoyed the laughter with his loved one. And he learned that freedom is not about just moving away from what you have, but embracing. It's all struggles, it's all beauty, and enjoy it, the life that you have with the way it is. So this is a story. This is a folk tale, and the name of the folk tale is the man who became a bird. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you, Neeta, for kicking off the session with such a lively telling. And it's so deep rooted in the nature. You really took us through those forests of those tall trees and the cloak of the shaman covered with feathers. Extremely lively and a deep message as well. You know, like every now, once in a while, we also feel that, right? Too many responsibilities. If only we could get away from this. And I think this story is going to be a reminder from here on. Every time I have that thought picture. Thanks, Nita. Thanks a lot. Just opening it out to the audience. Anybody wants to share anything? Please, this is the time.
Yeah, the insightful message that you have given about accept yourself as you are. and also about nurturing, love for oneself. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepta. Thank you. Neena. Thank you for your beautiful messages, all of you. I'm deeply touched, and I really enjoyed doing this session. And I want to thank again CSF for inviting me, and I want to wish all the storytellers who are being a part of CSF best wishes to all of you. And let's have a beautiful time all together.
Lovely, Mrs. Neeta. June, you want to say something?
Yes, I enjoyed the story very much. I especially enjoyed the insertion of the song. It really brought it alive for me.
Thank you. Thank you, dear, so much.
Neeta.
Hi,
Hi,
Veena.
Hi,
Hi.
Neeta. What a wonderful way to open this wonderful storytelling, event. And I really didn't hear this story before, and such a wonderful message at the same time. Your song, really worked very well with the story. I loved your narrative, the way, and the last you threw those feathers. That was also very nice. Lovely story.
Thank you so
Really
much.
enjoyed. Thank you so much.
Veena, anybody else? So, Neeta, do you share American folktales a lot of times? Or
Not really. I mean, every time. But when I got to know the theme, what was our theme of this CSF, then I was looking for the story, and I came across this beautiful story, and from that day I'm in mind, yes, I will share this story only because because whenever I do any session or share in story, I always look forward to a story that I feel loves sharing it. I mean, when you enjoy sharing your story, then you can, that the energy, that passion that you can pass to your audience, that happiness and the joy of sharing, you pass to your audience. So yes, I love the story, and I hope that you all also love the story.
yes, definitely your passion and your love. We could see you enjoying the story, right? So then, as you said, obviously, so all of us enjoyed it as well. Deepa, you want to say something?
Yeah, I love Neeta's voice modulations. The expressions are amazing. And yes, I just echo what everyone else said. Thank you for bringing out this story, Neeta.
Thank you. Thank you
Beautiful
so
story.
much, Deepa. Thank you so much. I think we can all relate to this story.
Yes.
Yes. It's whenever we say ki, oh, we want to be just away from this, we want this freedom and all. But freedoms and is not like just escaping from your responsibility and challenges. Just enjoy every phase of it and embrace it with all its joy and beauty and enjoy all its steps.
So true. I love the way the story went through a complete phase of how he was upset, not happy with his life, and then he finds a ray of hope. He realizes his mistake. He enjoys being a bird to begin with, and then he realizes, you know what, this is not the best thing possible. And of course, there's a lesson learned as well. And it all is well that ends well. So it's like a complete circle. He's come back to where he was, but probably as a much better man. So I
Yes.
love the way the whole, the story, the way it takes forward. That's really beautiful. Any other thoughts? Anybody?
Yeah, Ambu here.
Yes, Ambu, go ahead.
I echo everything what everybody said. Just one little thing I wanted to add was I really loved the place when you ended the story by saying like when he came back with more experience and knowledge, it was much better. I think you referred to that throne there. So that was sounding like that was the wow thing for me in that story. Thank you, Neeta.
Thank you so much, Ambuji. Thank you so much.
Okay, I guess with that, we'll move on to our next storyteller. Thank you once again for that, Neeta. Next, we have MaryAnn Paterniti. Mary, please excuse me if I've got the pronunciation wrong.
It's perfect.
Thank you.
No, you did it perfectly. It's Italian.
Thank you so much. So we have MaryAnn joining us from Vermont. Sorry, I'm all like a tongue twister today. From Vermont. MaryAnn, we welcome you here. Please introduce yourself fully and share a story with us.
Yes, hi. Thank you for letting me join your festival. I've enjoyed them in years past as a listener. And this is another transformation story, like the first one. The grass is not always greener on the other side, but it's an Egyptian, I think, fairy tale because it's got magic in it, but I guess you can consider it a folk tale too. There was once a beautiful Egyptian princess. She had everything. She lived in a palace. She was adorned with gold. She had servants, but she wasn't happy. She was lonely. Her father was a powerful pharaoh who was often harsh and cruel. Her brothers and sisters were only concerned with who was going to succeed the throne. Her mother had died when she was young, and she sorely missed her. And now that she was of marrying age, suitors were lining up, but they didn't love her for who she really was. They saw a wealthy princess heir to the throne, and she just wanted to be loved for who she was inside. And so, realizing that she was not going to be able to find that love living with her father in the palace, with the help of servants, she packed up her belongings and slipped away in the middle of the night onto a barge down the Nile River. And they went as far as she could away from the palace, and they came to a cataract that's it's like whitewater rapids. It's very dangerous, but when she navigated that, they floated to a remote island where they lived in tents until her servants could build her a small home. And there she thought, when she left the palace and got away from her father, that she would find true love. But the island was so remote that hardly any boats passed. And when they did, they didn't stop, just an occasional merchant selling its wares. And so she was lonely. But at least she could enjoy swimming in the freshwater pool that was secluded by reeds, and then she would sun herself on the rocks, all alone. At least she thought she was all alone. But unbeknownst to the princess, someone, or I should say something, was watching her. It was it was a humongous young hippopotamus. And he watched her from the reeds with only his eyes and his ears sticking above the water so he wouldn't frighten her with his enormous size. And he watched her every day as she swam and she sat on the rocks to dry off. And the more he watched her, the more he fell in love with her. He was hopelessly in love with her. Now, you might think it's odd that a hippopotamus would be in love with a princess, and no one would agree with you more than the hippo himself, but you can't dictate who you love. He couldn't help himself, and he only wished that he could be a human so that she could love him in return. One day when he was watching her, 2 herons came by and stood among the reeds to fish, and their legs were perfectly still, but their beaks were moving. And one said to the other, "Did you hear about the magician?" "No, what magician?" "Oh, there's a magician that lives beyond the 3rd cataract, and he's very powerful. He lives in a little cave, but he can grant wishes." "What kind of wishes?" "Oh, he can change anything into anything else." With that, the hippo's ears perked up. A magician who could grant wishes? He had to hear more, so he swam closer, but he rustled the reeds and he chased the fish away, and the herons flew off in disgust. But he had heard enough, he thought. A magician that lived in a cave beyond the 3rd cataract who could grant wishes? Maybe he could make him a human who the princess could love. Now, it was a dangerous journey. He had never gone that far before, but the princess was worth it. And so he took off swimming, and he swam for days and weeks and months, Seasons passed. He came to another country, but he finally made it past the third cataract, and there was a small cave. He thought, could that be it? So he hid and watched. He saw a giraffe going in and a bird flying out. He saw a cat going into the cave and a lion bounding out. He saw a crocodile crawl into the cave and a monkey run out. And he thought, this must be where he lives. And so he went to the entrance to the cave. It was so enormous, he blocked the whole entrance. And he saw in the cave that there was a fire and a man with a long white beard sitting cross-legged, sewing crocodile teeth onto a jacket. And he was afraid to say anything. But the magician finally said, well, are you going to make a wish or are you just going to stand there and block my light? Oh, well, I came to ask you if I could be a human that the Egyptian princess could love. Oh, I know the princess, but no, can't do it. Can't do it. I can't turn animals into people, people into animals. Too messy, too messy. Ask for something else. But what? He'd come all that way and he wasn't going to get his wish? And tears rolled off his cheeks and splashing onto the floor. And the magician looked and said, oh, don't get all weepy crying on me. I said, I can't turn you into someone that the princess would love, but I can turn you into something that you would love. Well, like what? Well, she's a human. I could turn you into gold. Humans love gold. Necklace, bracelet, earrings, you name it. No, well, this princess doesn't love gold. If she loved gold, she would still be with her father at the palace. Point taken. Oh, she's a woman. Women love makeup. I could turn you into malachite to be crushed and put on her eyes. She would look beautiful. I don't want to be crushed. And besides, she doesn't need makeup. She's beautiful just the way she is. Well, then maybe food. You know, people like to eat. Humans love, something sweet. It's like a cake. I could turn you into cake. She would love that. I want her to love me. I don't want her to eat me. That's a terrible idea. Well, then you decide. What do you want to be? Well, I like my shape. There was a girl hippo back in my pond, and she thought I looked pretty handsome, but I'm too big. I have to be much smaller. And yeah, what else? Well, maybe a different color. Instead of gray, maybe blue. That's her favorite color. It seems to be her favorite color. Oh, I got it, said the magician. I'm going to turn you into a little blue statue. I'll put designs on your back. Oh, she'll love you. Well, a statue? Well, how would I get there? Oh, no problem. There's a merchant who's coming tomorrow. I'll just give you to him and he'll give you to the princess as a gift. Well, what if she doesn't love me? What if she doesn't love me after all that? Well, then you get a second wish. Now, I don't advertise this, but I give everybody a second wish in case you regret wishing in the first place. And you can use that wish for anything, or you can save it and use it to change yourself back into a hippo, back to your home again. So what have you got to lose? And the hippo thought about it and said, what do I have to lose? And so, because the magician was a powerful magician, he waved his hands and said some magic words. And the hippo felt himself getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the cave getting larger and larger until he became a little blue hippo. And the magician picked him up and wrapped him in a soft napkin. And the merchant happily took him to the princess and gave the hippo to her as a gift. And as soon as she saw it, she loved it. Oh, how adorable. I love it. And from that day forward, he went everywhere Wherever the princess went, the little blue hippo went too. When she swam in the pool, he waited for her on the rocks. And then when she dried off, she sang him songs and told him about her childhood. When she was eating, he would sit at the table right at the edge of her plate and watch her. And at night, and this was his favorite part, he would be on her nightstand, and in the glow of the hurricane lamp, she would tell him stories that she remembered her mother telling her. And then before she went to sleep, she would kiss him right on the top of his head. That his heart was full. He was so happy. But like all things that we own, the princess eventually grew tired of the little blue hippo and left him on the nightstand and left all day long. And at night when she came, sometimes she would kiss him on the head, sometimes she would speak to him. But then there came a time when she didn't say anything at all, no kisses on the head. He was lonely day and night. And he regretted his wish. He thought, I made a mistake. If I'd stayed myself, that girl, Hippo, and we probably could have had one or two hippos of our own by now. And then he decided he was going to use his second wish and wish himself back to the way he was. But he wanted to wait one more time to see the princess, to say goodbye. And that night, when she came back, he saw that she was crying. And she picked him up and she cradled him and said, "Oh, little blue hippo, you are so lucky that you don't have a heart. Because if you had a heart like mine, it would be breaking. All I ever wanted was for someone to love me for who I really am. Not what I look like, not what I own. Is that too much to ask?" And she fell asleep crying. And the little blue hippo sat and thought all night long. And before the daylight broke, he made his wish. He said, "I wish that a handsome, noble, and righteous man would come to this island and see the princess's true beauty and love her, and she would love him, and they would be happy." And because the magician was a very good magician, he waved his hands and said some magic words, and that very day, a ship came by, and out stepped a handsome, noble, and righteous man. And when he met the princess, he recognized that she was a beautiful person inside and out, and he fell in love with her, and she with him. They were soulmates, and she was so happy. And the little blue hippo was glad for her. But he was sad for himself because from then on, he had to see her love someone else the way he wanted to be loved by her. And to make matters worse, he was put on a high shelf with the other half-forgotten objects to collect dust day after day after day after day. And it was hopeless for the little blue hippo. And just when he thought things couldn't get worse, they did, because a servant came by to dust him and knocked him off the shelf, and he landed on the tile floor and smashed into 1,000 pieces. And then he found himself back in the cave with the magician. And the magician said, "Oh, that was a close one, but don't worry, I got all your pieces back together again, every one of them." Now, I wasn't quite truthful when I told you that I couldn't turn an animal into human, human into animal. I couldn't do that. I couldn't turn you into a human until I knew that you had some human qualities. And by using that wish selflessly to make somebody else happy, well, that was really a human quality. And so now I'm going to grant your wish, and I'm going to turn you into someone the princess will love. And before the hippo could say anything at all, the magician waved his hands and said some magic words, and suddenly the hippo was found himself in the princess's arms, and she was looking down at him with such love in her eyes as she was smiling, and it was looking up at her beautiful face. And she said, "Oh, my darling baby boy, how I love you so. But wherever did you get those beautiful blue eyes?" And if the princess ever found out that the baby was once her little blue hippo that she loved, well, she probably would have loved him even more. Thank you.
Wow, that is such a heartwarming story, MaryAnn, and so beautifully told. I think all of us fell in love with the princess and more so with the cute little hippo. And I love the little hippo that you showed us. So beautiful, so beautiful.
Yeah.
So cute that is. And I think the entire story, we were just with you every single scene, and we felt the love. We genuinely felt the love.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, do you think that's a folk tale or a fairy tale?
I would look at it as a folk tale because folk tales have magic as well. But I think Eric has something to share there. Yes, Eric, please go ahead.
Yes, at the folklore department at the University of Pennsylvania, where I was trained. Yeah, why don't we go into gallery mode?
There we
are. A folk tale is a story that's passed down by generation to generation and has no individual author. And a fairy tale is one type of folk tale. A fairy tale, as you say, has some magic in it. So, where did you find the story?
I heard it from a storyteller in New York called Luann Adams. And it was about 30 years ago. I heard her tell this story in New York City. And I love it, you know, and when she was telling it, I was like, oh no. But you know, when his wish was finally granted, I was really like at the edge of my seat going, no, but she's happy with the don't take that away from her. But it, you know, it had a twist at the end where
did that storyteller say where the story was from?
I believe I think it's a picture book, but it's out of print. She heard it from somebody else, but I think it was actually a story, like a storybook at one point.
From what country, we don't know.
Egypt.
Well, yeah. You know, we don't really know if that story is from the oral tradition or if it was made up by an individual. For that, you have to do a PhD in folklore and and spending many hours in the library. But it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. I must say, I knew from the beginning that it was not really going to be satisfying for the hippo to be an object.
Yeah.
Even a beloved object. And I was so hoping that the magician would give him a second chance to be a human, which the magician did. But I also was not satisfied that the hippo became her child, because the hippo wanted to be her lover. And there's a difference between being a child and a lover. So what I thought was going to happen was that the hippo was going to be put inside the body of the man who married the princess. And then I was wondering, well, what's going to happen to the personality of the man who married the princess if the hippo is going to replace? So you see, I was asking too many questions.
Well, I feel, you know, I've had 2 children, and I know the love that I feel for them, and that's a love that I think is a very satisfying love too.
I wanted to add to that, Eric, because he wanted true love, not necessarily just as a lover, but I think it was love in a pure form, either as a lover or as a child. I think it's way too pure is what he was looking for. That's my thought, anyways.
Okay.
Ambu, you want to say something? Please go ahead.
Well, I just want to add before Ambu begins that
Sure.
I agree with Pratigya. Your telling is very direct and very strong and clear. It
Thank
really
you.
felt like, you were talking to us, we were talking to you, we were having a conversation with you. Wonderful.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. It's very nice to be here.
Ambuja, I interrupted you.
Ambu, go ahead, and then we can have June sharing her thoughts.
Yeah. So it's like from the beginning till the end, we were with you throughout the story. And the nice thing was like there were points where like, oh no, the story is going to end on a negative tone. And then all of a sudden there's a twist and something positive comes up. And I definitely I didn't see that coming at the end. I was wondering, oh, now there are two lovers, what will happen? And now it's going to be a triangle lover, whatever. No, lots of questions, like how Eric said, many questions, many things were branching out. And the child thing was like, I literally had goosebumps when you mentioned, we didn't see that coming, the way you explained the child in her hands. And that was very, very nice to do. And thanks for sharing that story, MaryAnn. Like, I would definitely love to share the story somewhere, sometime in future. Hope you all have the permission for that. I'll definitely write to you when I do. Yeah.
It's the nature of folk tales that everybody tells it differently. Folk tales are always evolving. So if I tell that story, I'm going to tell it that the hippo was brought into the body of the man who married her.
We could see that coming, Eric.
Eric, actually, what you should do is the hippo should go into the princess for it to be born as a child, not into the man.
No, I want the hippo because the hippo created the man who married her, right? He wished for her.
He wished for him, yeah. He requested for him to appear from wherever he was.
Go into that man's body. That man's personality can go into their child.
Keeping everybody happy, huh, Eric? And
Yeah.
finding your way as well.
Yeah.
Yes, June, please go ahead.
MaryAnn, that story is very well known in my community, and I think everybody has told that story. But you brought a fresh take for me and many new elements in the story, and it was very refreshing, and I enjoyed it very much, especially the dialogue that the magician had. It was funny and made me smile, but thank you for the freshness of that story.
And June is in Toronto, Canada. So that story is just generally known among the immigrants?
Yes.
So just
I think everybody in my community has told that story at one time or another. We had a famous storyteller, Alice Kane, and I think that was in her collection. And everybody sort of followed Alice Kane, and it's such a beautiful story. Everybody wanted to tell it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess because the main character is a hippopotamus, naturally it would have come from either Egypt or some other country where hippopotamuses live.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of museums sell that little blue hippopotamus.
Yeah, that's where I got it. Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful. The museum tie-in.
Yeah, it's a faience. It's a blue faience hippo. It's the finish on it. It's faience.
Yes.
We are all going to go hippo hunting now because all of us have loved the story and we're itching to share the story.
That's so true. You spoke my mind. You just said what I was feeling. I really give you a high five on that. MaryAnn, what a superb storytelling and what a wow ending. I never thought this would happen. You narrated it so beautifully. You really touched my heart so beautifully. And I heard this story for the first time. And as Pratigya says, I'm also going to search for a hippo now. Little blue hippo. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Just Soumya here. I just want to, I came in at the end, I'm so sorry, but This is a story that I had come across, and thank you for reminding me of the reincarnation angle. That wishes that you can wish yourself into a life. I read it as a Joanne Marshall Grant. There was a lady who was she had a past life memory of being an Egyptian princess, and this is a story actually written by her. Is what I think it is because I remember coming across it. The blue Faience hippopotamus, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they're called, blue fans.
Yeah, Faience hippopotamus, and it is yeah. Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to say that yeah, come across the story, and it was a fascinating story about past life and reincarnation. So it connected to me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. Yes, Ken, please go ahead.
Yes, I put a link in the chat for where you can find it. This story published by Alice Kane, Kane, 1995. It's a collection of stories, and it's the blue Faience. I believe it's fiance. Yes.
I don't know. I say fans.
Faience. Well, at any rate, you were looking for the literary source for the story, and it's in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was very hands-on and quick, and all of us were looking forward to it. So thanks a lot for sharing that with us. Any other thoughts, anybody? Right. Before we move on to the next teller, MaryAnn, I also wanted to add that I love the characterization of the magician. So lighthearted, so easy to speak, and yet profound, and just getting along the way that he did. I love the way you created the magician for us, and so the conversations between the magician and the hippo also came off very, very beautifully. Thank you once again for sharing such a beautiful story in such a wonderful way. Thanks a lot. Right.
MaryAnn, are you originally from the USA?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I heard a USA.
Vermont is the northeastern USA.
Very good, but you've settled in Italy.
No, I said the name. My name is Italian. My name is Sicilian, Paterniti.
Oh, you're in Vermont.
Yeah.
I see. Wonderful.
Okay. Looks like Shraddha has something to add there. Yes, Shraddha, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just very quickly. MaryAnn, loved the story. Just second what everyone else has said. I also want to point out that your visualization cues were amazing. Like right from the herons that stood amongst the reeds with their legs very still, but their beaks were moving, right down to a big, huge, humongous. You really took the listener on a ride there. So beautifully told. Thank you so much for that story.
Thank you.
So that's Shraddha. Just one more thing I wanted to add. I love the way you say it was a pig. No. I mean, it looks so genuine the way you were trying to explain how the hippo was. I think all of us will go on and on about this, so I'll have to put a stop there and move on to our next teller. Thanks once again, MaryAnn. Thanks once again, Ken. I think you put in one more detail in the chat about the story. We have our next teller for the day, Divya Anand. Divya is a storyteller from Chennai. Welcome, Divya. Please introduce yourself fully and share a story with us.
Thank you, Prati. Neeta and MaryAnn, lovely stories echoing everybody's thoughts. Wonderfully narrated. As mentioned, my name is Divya Anand, a storyteller from Chennai, trained under Eric for storytelling, passionate about it like all of you here. Very thankful for the opportunity to be able to tell a story and be part of this wonderful festival once again.
Divya, excuse me, are you holding a guitar?
Yeah.
Are you going to play?
Very little.
Sometimes Zoom has a difficulty with voice and instruments together. and they encourage us to choose an audio setting called.
Yeah, that I have chosen that, Eric.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's see if it works.
I'm not playing too much. It's just a little bit of a chord, not much.
Please play on, play on.
Yeah. This story comes to you from North India. काहे करे लो गुमान गोरी सावन में छाए घटा घोर चमके बिजली जहो बड़े बूंदन फुहार गोरी सावन में बड़े बूंदन फुहार गोरी सावन में. Savan is monsoon. Ghata ghan ghor are dark clouds through the sky. And bijli is lightning. The scene is of downpour, of rain, of torrential rain. Sita was a little girl who lived on an island with her grandparents. It was an island not far from the riverbank, and she had come to live under their care at a very young age. Dadaji and Dadima, she called them. Dadaji means grandfather, and Dadima means grandmother in Hindi. She loved them so dearly. This river, the bank around it was beautiful, lush landscape, and towering trees, and ducks wading, egrets calling, the water, the glimmering waters in the sunlight. In general, the air was filled with the song of birds. What a beautiful place it was. Sita loved the island. Sita loved the river. The water level of the river was very low compared to the island. It had never risen much, you know. The hut, there was a very little hut, small hut, 3 walls of which were built with mud and brick. And the 4th wall was actually a rock which came all the way up from the riverbed up top. They were people of meager means, but very happy. And in the front yard, there was a big peepal tree, a very old tree, almost as old as the island. In the front yard, Dadaji had planted some vegetables. Yeah, it's a small kitchen garden, and he was an adept fisherman. So he caught fish, and with the vegetables, they met their daily needs. This peepal tree, it was very old, like I said. Its magnificent trunk and the sprawling branches, beautiful tree. There were goats and chickens, and Sita loved to play with them. The goats would lock horns in the tree trunk and bleat away, much to the annoyance of Sita, but she loved playing. The river was almost like a companion, you know. When she would go to sleep in the night, that soft gurgling noises would lull her to sleep. She would play with the goats, play with the chicken, and you know, the most favorite spot of Sita on that entire island, she would deftly climb that tree trunk like a little monkey and go and sit on top of that topmost branch and play hide and seek with the sunlight, sing and dream and everything. And from there, she could see the entire island, and beyond, she felt very high and mighty sitting there, you know. So that's how Sita's days were, helping out Dadaji, helping out Dadima with the chores and everything. She loved being like that. One time, in the early hours of the morning, there was a clap of thunder and lightning. And then the rain started. It began to drizzle and then pour heavily, and then little bit by little bit, it intensified. Now, you know what? Initially, when the rain starts, it's all very nice, you know. It's the petri shore, the earthy fragrance. then the soft breeze that brushes against your cheeks, then the soft wind and everything is greener. She loved it. But then a couple of hours later, when the rain became more and more torrential, the air starts to get gloomy. Don't you agree? That's how it was. She started to get scared. So she had a little doll like this, a little rag doll called Mamta. Mamta was her best friend, her secret keeper. What secret Sita had, we don't know. But Mamta knew it all. So Sita got scared of this torrential rain. Why was the river behaving like this? There were waves crashing in and out. The river was violent and turbulent. So she took Mamta, clutched her like this, and sat huddled in a corner of the hut. The chickens started running, and the goats started bleating. And amidst all this chaos, Dadima developed a fever. She started burning up. And they tried some home remedies and medicines, whatever they could, but nothing seemed to work. Well, the spells of rain were on and off. And it was evening by now. And still Dadima's fever hadn't subsided. So Dadaji called Sita and said, Gudiya, Gudiya means little doll. He said, look, if Dadima's fever doesn't subside, then I shall have to take her to the hospital at Shahganj. And you shall have to take care of the house by yourself. Okay, Gudiya? And look at the maturity of that small kid. Her first words that she said were not, Dadaji, please don't leave me and go. What will I do alone on the island? No. She said, Dadaji, what do I do if the water rises in the river and comes all over the island? So Dadaji said, well then run to that topmost branch of that peepal tree like you usually do and sit there. Stay put till everything is calm and nice and settle down and then come down. So she agreed. And in the morning, the rain had stopped, but Dadima's fever hadn't subsided. And then Dadaji put Dadima onto the boat and put 3 goats onto the boat as well in case he might have to sell them to meet the expenses. And they started to row away. And as they moved further away from the island, Sita's heart skipped a beat, her heart pounded. She felt a big sense of desperation. Oh, what will I do? Then she went into the hut, cleaned up a bit, and brought Mamta out, sat her on a rock, and started talking to her like all children normally do with their dolls. So she would ask questions and answer them herself, like Mamta. Mamta, will Dadima's fever be she'll be better soon? Will it go away? Mamta said, yes, of course, it will. I do hope so, Mamta. And the goats, I hope they don't have to be sold. Silly, the goats will be here before you realize it, bleating away to your annoyance, but they will be back, you see. I hope so, Mamta, I hope so. You know, Mamta, why is the river behaving like this? I think it's throwing a tantrum. Why is it like that? I've never seen the river like this. It's always a calm and peaceful and very, very soft river. It's angry. Why is it angry? I think the gods are upset with something, and that is why they've made the river behave like this. The gods are supposed to take care of us. Mamta? I will always take care of you. I'll always protect you. I won't leave you off like that to fend for yourself amidst the rains and the storm and everything. As she was speaking, her feet felt a little wet. And she looked down and saw that the water had actually crept onto the island. In a state of panic, she dropped Mamta right there and ran into the hut and gathered a few objects a few groceries and clothes and some vegetables and some things that she thought might be of use to Dadima and Dadaji, put them in that, closed it, stood on top of a small mudha. They call it a stool. It's called mudha. She stood on that and stored the trunk away on top of a cupboard. And the water was rising slowly and slowly, inch by inch. She darted out of the house without thinking, climbed onto the peepal tree and ran and perched herself on top of that branch and looked down, and the water had taken everything. Slowly, all objects were floating away, and Mamta was floating away in the water. She cried, Mamta! But she was helpless. What could she do? Here she was a few minutes back saying she would protect her, she will take care of her. And then what happened? She couldn't do anything. But she clutched that tree branch with all her might and sat there. Now the rain started pouring even more heavily. And then there was a strong gust of wind, and there was a sharp crack and a creaking sound, and the tree started to sway vigorously, and then it started to bend, and bent over, and thud and splosh, it fell into the river. And with that, Sita into the water, fully drenched, but clinging on to that branch with all her might and her eyes closed. Now everything was left to the gods. After what seemed like hours later, she feebly opened her eyes and saw a boat approaching her. And in that boat was a little boy. He was rowing the boat. He came near her, stretched out his arm, and pulled her inside the boat. She was cold. She was shivering, and her teeth were clattering. She couldn't even say, thank you for saving my life. She just sat there. And then the boy reached into a satchel and pulled out 2 juicy mangoes, big, ripe ones. Sita grabbed that mango and started digging into that. Oh, it was the ripest and most juiciest of mangoes that she had ever eaten. She ate it to her heart's content. Her heart was filled with happiness, and her head was a complete blank. Juice flowing all over her elbow and full mouth and everything. And once done, she looked at the boy and said, thank you so much for saving my life. Who are you? What is your name? And he said, my name is Kishan. I live in that village there near the mountains. And then they got to talk. And then he rowed her to the bank where she got off. And he said, well, take care, be careful. Where she wanted to go to the marketplace near Shahganj, where the hospital was. And he said, well, take this flute with you. It will remind you of me. This is my flute. And keep it with you. I might come and collect it from you someday, but till then, it will keep you company. Sita accepted it, and she watched Kishan walk away into the bushes. But then, when she saw that silhouette of Kishan, she felt it was an image of Lord Krishna. Those Lord Krishna stories that Dadima used to tell her, and she used to listen to them. Could he be Lord Krishna? No, he can't be. Could he be? With these thoughts, she was walking when there was a farmer coming in his cart, and he was also going to the marketplace. So she requested him to drop her off, which he kindly agreed to do. And he took her and dropped her off at the marketplace. And she was walking towards the hospital where she saw her Dadaji. Dadaji, she screamed and ran into his arms and hugged him tight. And tears rolled down her cheeks. And Dadaji also started to weep. He said, Gudiya, I'm so sorry I left you alone in all this chaos, but I really didn't know what to do. And he came to tell her that Dadima is now closer to the gods, Gudiya. And she held on to his arms and his hand tighter because she would be his support now. Dadima was no more. He had lost his best friend, his companion. So she would be his companion from now on. And so saying, they walked to the hospital where the goats were tethered. Luckily, they didn't have to sell them. So they brought the goats back, and all of them came to the riverbank, got into the boat, and rowed back to the island. The rain had stopped, but the island was in shambles. In a completely battered state, the roof had flown off of the hut. Everything was lying around, floating around. And that trunk that she had kept all the valuables and immediate necessities, that was floating around, luckily. Well, Dadaji started picking up pieces one by one. And she also started helping, and her hand brushed against something in her dress. She pulled out, and it was the seed of the mango that she had eaten. She had kept it with her. So she ran to where the peepal tree was. Peepal tree was uprooted. So she dug a little bit of mud, put the seed there, and buried it back, and said, someday you too will be a savior. And then they started mending, sorting things out, and rebuilding slowly. And things started returning to normalcy. And one day, when she sat on a rock with her legs splashing in the water, something brushed against her leg. And she saw and picked it up. It was a peacock toy. Could this replace Mamta? She looked at it fondly. And she saw somebody approaching on the side. It was none other than Kishan. She said, Kishan. He said, I have come to collect my flute. I hope you have it. She said, yes, yes. It always reminded me of you and how you saved my life. Come sit. And he sat next to her with his legs too down in the water. And she said, Kishan, can you imagine this river, this beautiful and calm and such a beautiful river was so angry a few days back? Why was it so angry? I can't believe it, that this river turned so angry. And Kishan said, well, Sita, this river is a part of a much bigger universe that we are all part of. And this is what teaches us to live, to hope, and to survive. And he looked at her and smiled softly. The end. This story is the Angry River, written by the acclaimed author Ruskin Bond, which I presented in my style of telling. Thank you all so much for listening to the story.
Yeah, really deep story. And I love the way you took us through those deep thoughts without being preachy. And, the way you started off with theme in nature. We really enjoyed the island all around us. And I think I love the way the whole story went. Very beautifully told as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prati.
Just opening it out to the audience. Anybody wants to share their thoughts?
Yes, Pratigya.
Yes, Ambu, please go ahead.
Okay, I have heard Divya tell different kinds of stories, but this one I have never watched her. This kind of style I have never watched her telling, and it's really, what do I say? It's so seamless. The narration was so seamless, and I could feel the island, I could feel the rain, and I could each and everything. The visuals were so clear, and the way you narrated it, it was like I didn't move away from my place at all. So it's like, it's such a, I really do. I didn't expect this from you. What I mean to say is, you know what I mean.
No, I completely understand, Ambu.
It's very beautiful. It was lovely listening to you, Divya.
Thank you, Ambu. Thank you so much.
Short telling is what I would say. Thank you.
Thanks, Ambu. And yes, as Ambu was saying, Divya, this is not the typical Divya genre kind of a story. So very different one, but handled just as beautifully as you usually do it with your stories. So really beautiful. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I can see MaryAnn giving you thumbs up there.
Thank you, MaryAnn.
Yeah.
Yes, MaryAnn, please go ahead.
I love the you know, that she thought that the river was a companion, you know, and you know, that's a really nice, what people who live near water kind of feel that way, you know, they have a connection. And you know, it really connected with my story too, you know, with the near a river, and you know, the life that goes around there. But it had me on the edge of my seat. I was really afraid for her when she was clinging to that tree, that branch. I was like, oh, all right, well told, very nice, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary.
So Divya, tell me something about Mamta. Did you create her yourself?
No, it is part of the story.
I'm saying the doll. Did you
Oh, that doll, yeah. That I did myself.
Ah, interesting one, yes.
Yeah.
Lovely. Very creative, huh?
I'm really worried about Mamta.
Yes, Ambu, please go ahead.
No, sorry. I'm really worried about Mamta. I wish Mamta was back again.
I know. I was hoping somehow she's going to float and come back. I was hoping and, praying for that and rooting for it. But,
Yeah.
you still got, I think, did you say a peacock toy?
Yeah.
Still
So
something
peacock
else
toy turns up, and I think it's kind of making up for what she lost earlier, like a very good companion of hers. But then this comes up. So no, that's what happens, right? In reality also, there are so many ups and downs, highs and lows, and this kind of shows that resilience that you pick yourself up. So there's this very little child in Sita, but there's also that immense resilience and courage that she shows all through. So it connected very well.
And that connection, and rather that discussion between Mamta and Sita, that was very interesting, and it came out very beautifully. Some very deep-rooted questions asked in such a childlike manner. I think that really came out very beautifully. I love that conversation between Mamta and Sita. Definitely, that was one of my highlights in the story.
Thank you.
Okay, I think with that, we'll move on to the next teller of the day. Thank you so much, Divya. Thanks once again.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
So we have June Brown from Toronto sharing her story now. Welcome, June, to CSF. Please introduce yourself fully and share a story with us.
Yes. My name is June Brown, and I'm from Toronto, Canada. And I think this is my 4th year, probably, at the Chennai Festival. And I'm always so pleased to be invited to tell. And I have a French-Canadian folktale today. A long time ago in the 17th century, little remote French-Canadian villages dotted the Laurentian Mountains in Canada. They were surrounded by a dark, foreboding forest, where trees grew so close together that sometimes the sunshine could not reach the forest floor. And this frightened the people, for the trails were not well marked between the villages and the farms. And in the summer, if you got lost, it could be hours before you found your way back. And in the winter, the winter was different. The winter with its cold and snow and darkness. If you got lost then, well, there was a good chance that you would freeze to death. Outside one of these little villages, about 3 kilometers outside Saint Adele, old Pierre and his wife Maria had a farm. One time, They had many children to keep them company. But now the children had grown up and were gone, and so the old couple were alone. Now, one of the things that frightened everybody in the forest were the wild animals. There were moose and bear and wolves, but there was an animal they feared even more, and that was the loup-garou, the werewolf. He liked to haunt the forest, hide behind bushes, and pounce and devour any traveler that was foolish enough to travel alone in those woods, especially under a full moon, the favorite time of the werewolf to hunt. Now, if old Pierre and Marie had to go to town or visit a neighbor, they had to go through the deepest, darkest part of the woods. But they had never been harmed because they were never foolish enough to travel by themselves, especially under a new moon. And if at times they did travel by themselves and were in the village when darkness settled, well, they would stay overnight with family or friends and travel back home in the morning. Now, it was 1 January, the coldest month of the year in Canada, that Maria got sick. Pierre nursed her for a few days with broth and herbs, made her comfortable with blankets he warmed by the fire. But on the 4th afternoon, Pierre realized that if Maria was going to see another day, he would have to fetch the doctor in the little village of Saint-Adèle. He made his wife as comfortable as he could. He built up the fire, and then he put on his clothes, his warm hat, his parka, his fur mitts, his fur boots, and he stepped outside. All around him, the snow sparkled like diamonds, for darkness had fallen, and he looked up and saw a full moon. This is not a good time, he thought, to be going into the woods alone. But his love for Maria was so strong that he pushed that thought aside and quickly made his way to the barn, where he hitched up his fastest horse, Bella, to the one-horse sleigh. In no time, they had left the moonlit barnyard behind and were moving into the forest. The trees moved in like a wall around them. All you could hear was the swish, swish, swish of the runners of the sleigh in the snow, and the little tingle of the bells on the horse's harness. Once in a while, there'd be a hoo of an owl, but for the most part, the woods were silent. As they moved along, Pierre gave a thought, oh, to make it in time. And then it started to snow, a heavy snow. And now they could hear branches breaking off and tumbling to the ground. Bella was trotting along when suddenly she slowed down. Pierre cracked his whip above her head. Vite, vite, Bella, faster, faster. But the horse would not go faster. In fact, Bella slowed down even more. She seemed to be straining in her harnesses, as if she were pulling a wagon laden with heavy lumber, instead of a sleigh with just an old man. He cracked his whip again over her head. This time she tossed her head, her ears went back, and she whinnied. And her whinny was full of fear. Now Pierre could see that on her back, sweat was breaking out, and the fear she was feeling was rolling back and filling the old man. And that's when behind him he heard a low, menacing growl. He turned to look, and there, clinging to the back of the sleigh, was a giant wolf, its claws and teeth clamped on. Without even thinking, Pierre snapped his whip over the creature's nose, and a howl of pain went up. It dropped back off the sleigh, tumbling into the snow, and Bella took off, racing as if 1,000 devils were at her hooves. Vite, vite, called Pierre, but he needn't have done that, for now she was racing like a racehorse. But behind him, Pierre could hear the wolf running, and it was getting closer and closer and closer. And then there was the thump. And this time, when Pierre turned, he saw that that creature was now in the sleigh with him. He looked into those yellow eyes, those greedy eyes. He felt for the knife that he always kept on the outside of his coat in his belt, and he managed to get it into his hand, but he couldn't use it. The wolf pounced, pinning the old man to the floor of the sleigh. The weight of that creature felt as if his bones were being crushed. The creature opened its mouth, and Pierre saw those sharp teeth. He smelt that foul breath. And as they came towards his throat, he thought that this would be the end, not only for him, but for Maria too. And then, just as they began to close on his throat, he thrust that knife upward into the creature's side. It was a feeble effort, and Pierre thought it would do nothing, but he was wrong. Another howl of pain went up from the creature. It reared up onto its hind legs, and right before Pierre's astonished eyes, that creature started to shape and shift. The fur dropped away, the claws retracted, the ears that were pointed disappeared, and there, standing before Pierre, was a man, naked as the day he was born, a big hand holding his side, where Pierre could see drops of blood forming. It was then that Pierre knew that this wolf was not just a wolf, but a loup-garou, because all the stories had said the only way you could tell was if you were able to draw blood. Another howl of pain went from the creature. It leaped off the sleigh into the snow, bounded into those dark woods, and was soon swallowed up. All this time, Bella had been trotting as fast as she could, and soon Pierre was able to see the dark outline of the little houses in Saint-Adèle. He pulled up in front of the doctor's house. When the doctor opened the door, he found Pierre in shock, unable to talk, and he had to give him a drink of brandy. When Pierre told his tale, the doctor knew what he had to do. He quickly packed his bag, put on his warmest clothes, and the two men left, but not before the doctor picked up a vial of holy water that he kept at the front door for protection. The two men came back through the woods to the small farm unharmed. And they were in time to save Maria's life. When she had recovered fully and learned what Pierre had done, she made him promise that never again would he go into the woods at night alone, especially not under a full moon. It was an easy promise for the old man to keep. And so for the rest of his life, old Pierre never ever encountered another loup garou.
Wow. Such a gripping telling, June. Um, I think I'll open it up to the audience first and then I'll come to it. Yes, you want to share any thoughts, everybody? Okay, while everybody is still coming out of the forest and the werewolf field, what I found absolutely amazing was, June, such a gripping tale, and yet you told it with such ease, you know. You were not rushing through the story. I can't imagine if I was telling the story, I would have probably gone, it went really fast, and I would be probably, you know, going and speaking faster. And you were so calm in your telling, and yet you had each one of us at the edge of our seat, wondering what's going to happen. Absolutely loved it. The way you shared the story, just absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
May I?
Please go ahead with Lakshmi.
It was so gripping, and I could almost visualize myself being part of that story. It was amazing. The woods, the descriptives were just so beautiful, so beautiful. And the wolf at the back, that part was really scary. Very beautifully presented. Thank you, June.
I think, yes, as Vijayalakshmi was saying, we could actually visualize the werewolf claws on the sledge and how he had pinned him down. Everything, I think visuals were super, super strong. We could see the entire story happening right in front of us. Yes, Divya,
I was
please.
hoping it would give people a visualization of the woods in Canada, how forbidding they are, and how in the winter they're so much more dangerous.
Yeah.
It sure did. It sure did. Yes, Divya,
And
we can
you have
after
a
that
backdrop almost like the woods in your story. The background is
Yes,
almost like the woods in the story.
Yes, a well chosen one. Please go ahead, Divya.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely love the story, June, and very well presented. Suddenly, your voice would change to that aggressive tone but like you're very stoic like that, but then your voice would change to indicate that ferociousness, and suddenly we'll go to another zone there, and that felt a little, yeah, it did feel scary. So
thank you.
that was the intent. So wonderfully narrated. Thank you so much.
thank you so much. I really feel while you are telling the story, I was in Canada in the so unfriendly, so fearful winter forest, like wolf. Really, I felt like I was in Canada with you. Thank you so much.
Shraddha, did you put your hand up? I can't seem to find you now. Yes,
I have.
Vasudha ma'am.
I had put my hand up.
Okay.
I want to just mention to June that right from her backdrop to her words to her voice modulation up and down and the pace of the telling, everything was just wow for me. Thank you for that story, June.
Thank you.
Yes, Vasudha ma'am, please go ahead.
June, that was wonderful storytelling. In oral storytelling, we keep telling trainee storytellers, you recreate the picture in your listener's mind. You give the audio, the video, the sound effects, everything. Your story had all that. We could hear the harness, the bell, the swishing of the sleigh, and the sound the trees made. And through this, I was imagining almost like I was not even seeing the screen. I was seeing in my mind the werewolf rearing with his teeth and jaws and slimy, and I was waiting for it to snap on him. It was amazing storytelling, and I loved it so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, as ma'am was saying, we could smell that foul breath literally on, upon us. It was so good. It was so good. Have you shared the story before, June? Do you share the
Uh,
story often?
I don't tell it often. I probably would have told it maybe 3 or 4 times during my history. And it comes from one of Canada's foremost folklorists, Edith Folk. She collected a lot of folk tales, and this was one of her French Canadian folk tales. And there is an element of the church behind all this, but I didn't include it in. They thought the werewolf was like a separation from community. And in a remote setting like Quebec, community was everything. If you separated yourself from community, you were lost. So the werewolf was a symbol of being outside the community and lost to the community.
Yes, to be honest, when the werewolf turned into a human, and I was expecting, oh, something else is going to happen now, and then I realized, no, it's a werewolf, so yeah, it's going to come back to what it was. Yeah. So I was expecting another twist there. I think today I'm going down Eric's lane, questioning the things as the story is going on. Sudha, do you want to share something? No, you're just
No,
you're getting
not
ready for
really.
your story. All right, okay. Any other thoughts about what you liked about the story? Of course, the telling was amazing. Anything about the choice of the story or any other thoughts, anybody?
Well, I'd like to ask June what really drew you to the story? What do you really connect with in the story?
Well, I think I have a country property that looks just like my background. So, I'm connected to the woods and the forest and all that it presents in the various seasons and the coldness of Canada and being outside and being threatened by the elements and, being remote to other people. Yeah. So I'm drawn to that. The werewolf part, not so much. I like it, but it's the element, the environment that draws me into that story.
And
Yes.
such strong Canadians, really, their spirit I could feel.
Yeah.
And I think, as you're saying, when you shared the story clearly, your connect with the nature, with the woods did come out much stronger than the rest of it. I think all of us could, as we were saying, we could visualize the nature, the woods, and all of that. So yes, we could understand how that draws you more towards the story. Okay, I think with that we move towards.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, June. Thanks again. We would like to move towards last teller for the day. We have Sudha Umashanker, who is a storyteller from Chennai. Welcome, Sudha. Please introduce yourself fully and share a story with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Pratigya. Hello, everyone. It was wonderful listening to all the previous tellers, though I wish I could listen with my full focus. Coming at the fag end of this session, my thoughts were also on my story. So I promise all of you that I'm going to go and revisit all your stories again and really take in the beauty of it once again. Well, I'm a writer, a columnist, a storyteller, and activist based out of Chennai. And the story that I am going to share with you today is called The Wayward Princess. Now, once upon a time, there was a king who believed that everything he was taught was the right thing, and that everything he believed in was right. He was a just ruler, but in some matters, his ideas and his perspectives were very, very limited. One day, the king called his 3 daughters and said to them, "Everything that I have is yours or will be yours. But remember, it was I who brought you into this world. And therefore, it is my will that will determine your future and your fate." Now, 2 of his daughters were very dutiful and obedient, and they readily acquiesced to what their father said and concurred without a murmur. But the 3rd daughter had a mind of her own. And she said, "Father, although my position demands that I be obedient to the laws, I cannot accept that my future and my fate is dependent on your will." "Well, we'll see about that," said the king. And he ordered his men to put the girl in a prison cell where she languished for many, many years. In the meantime, the king and his other 2 daughters happily spent all the money that would have been expended on her or that was hers. At moments when he could reflect, the king reasoned, well, that girl is in prison not because of her will, but my will. And therefore, it should be clear to any logical mind that it is my will that determines her future and her fate. Now, all the people in the village started talking amongst themselves in hushed whispers. She must have done something really wrong to offend her father's soul. Otherwise, why would the king do something like this to somebody of his own flesh and blood? As far as they were concerned, the king was a just man, and they saw no reason to question his judgment. Once in a while, the king used to pay a visit to his daughter. She was getting lean and weak, but there wasn't a change, the slightest change in her attitude. And this upset the king. And he told her, "Your continued annoyance angers me no end. And it's a serious affront to my authority. If you were living in my realm, I would order my men to have you killed. But I am a merciful king, and therefore I will banish you to the wilderness adjoining my territory, where you will find yourself among eccentric outcasts and wild beasts. And there you can find out whether you can have a life apart from that of your family, and if you can, whether you prefer it to ours." No sooner than the decree had been passed, the girl was conveyed to the borders, into the wilderness, passed beyond the borders into the wilderness. And suddenly she found herself set loose in this vast wilderness, which was a far cry from the very protected surroundings she had enjoyed way back in her childhood. But she adapted very quickly. She soon discovered that a cave can make for a nice house, that fruits and vegetables can be got from trees and not just be served on golden plates, and that there is a sun to provide enough warmth. Soon she had ordered her life so well that she obtained water from the springs, fruits and vegetables and other things from the earth, and fire from a smoldering tree. And she thought for a minute and said, "This place is so unique. Here the elements all hang together, but separately or alone, they do not obey the commands of my father." Not long after, a lost traveler, a young man with great ingenuity and a lot of riches, came upon the exiled princess, and he fell in love with her and took her back to his land and married her. If you're thinking the story ends there, no, there's more. After a space of time, the young couple came back to this, and they started building the most beautiful city in which they invested all their riches and wealth and gave shape to their brilliant creative ideas, and all their artistic expressions found an outlet in that lovely space that was soon coming up. And what's more, even the eccentric outcasts blended in very harmoniously into this new setting and began to contribute usefully and productively. Soon, this little province, if I might call it that, became renowned. Its fame spread all over. And the two rulers were fated as wise and just rulers who had built the most beautiful city. The people of that dominion soon elected the princess and her husband as joint monarchs of this kingdom. Now, the king had all along been hearing about the fame that this new kingdom had acquired, and he was very keen to see for himself how this had happened. And what's more, he couldn't accept the fact that all the people he had termed as eccentric outcasts were happily peopling that city. And so he set out on a visit. And as he walked into the throne hall where the young couple were seated, he very slowly raised his head and looked at the young couple, these two wise and just rulers who had created a prosperous kingdom and whose fame had spread far and wide. And for a second, he locked his gaze on his daughter. And in that split second, he could hear her murmuring, "I hope, Father, that you now realize everyone has a choice and everyone has their own fate. Now, this story was told to Sultan Saladin by Ahmad al-Rifai of the Rifai order, or the Howling Dervishes. This was in response to a question he was asked. And the question was, what reasons do you have, if any, to suppose that the imposition of the rule of law, may I repeat, what reasons do you have, if any, to suppose that the imposition of the rule of law alone is not enough to ensure justice and happiness? And Ahmad al-Rifai told him this story in response way back in 1174. Since then, there have been many versions of the story, but the basic idea is to convey there could be another consciousness, another outlook at life and fate and future and all of that. So was the princess a wayward princess? I leave you to answer that. Thank you very much.
Yes, Sudha. Finishing a story with a question is always interesting. Thanks a lot for that. And I love the way you are not very expressive. You don't show too much of emotions. You don't move around a lot, but you had such a grip on the story. Every single word of yours, we were holding on to it, and the story came out just as beautifully as everybody else today. I have an interesting story that I had heard about on very same lines, but I will talk about that later. Let me see if the audience wants to share something on that. The floor is open to everybody. You want to share any thoughts on the story today? Yes, June, please go ahead.
The story had me thinking about the courage it takes to go against what everybody thinks is sort of the normal thing, the courage it takes to go your own route. And especially for women, a lot of times through history, the courage it takes for them to go against the norms of the society. So I enjoyed your story. Thank you.
Thank you, June. Yes, MaryAnn.
I was kind of horrified by the king's, he was a bully, and I thought he was very unjust, and it kind of reminds me of the extremism and the way the United States is going these days, with it's my way or the highway, and this is the way it's going to be. And it was a story, though, that filled the theme of this festival very well, with growing, maturing, transforming, the whole, I thought it was great, and disturbing, at the same time, that would do that to another person, much less his daughter, subject her to that just because she didn't do, she had her own will,
Yes, she didn't do his bidding.
Right. Well done. I love the story.
Yeah. Very impressive. I really enjoyed your storytelling, and I accepted this story. The princess become independent and being her own life by herself from very authoritative father or parents. So children should be independent and live their own life. Then be successful, like
even with career choices, very often there is there is a clash between what the parents want a child to do and what the child wants to take up, and there's a lot of friction, and until you prove yourself, you're always, you have that fear whether you did the right thing in standing up and following your heart, or whether you would be proven wrong.
Even sometimes if you prove yourself right, the ego that was there in this father, that personally resonates with me and with a lot of other women especially, who have to, no matter, even if they prove themselves right, so and the tagline that goes along with it, your parents only wish good for you, they can't be that bad. But a lot of women children have suffered because of this tag that continues even to this day. So that really personally resonates, and women can draw, or girls can draw inspiration from these kind of stories, that it's okay to stand up. Sometimes you're going to lose your family, like I know a lot of girls who have lost their family,
Yes.
sometimes permanently, and sometimes they come around, but after a lot of loss. But it's still okay, because everybody chooses their fate. And that line was amazing, and it was so right.
And I
It
love
also makes it worse when fathers are not very demonstrative, and they're not willing to sit down and talk. They're so blinded by, set in their heads about what they want for the children, and that makes it even more difficult. You can't even have a civil discussion.
Yeah.
Tempers are.
I have a personal experience, so I could relate it even at a better level. So thank you. What can I say, Anis? I'm glad that you took your choice, and clearly looks like you've done what you wanted to. So happy to know that here. Thank you.
It's a popular tale type. The rigid old king and his three daughters, and often it's the youngest daughter who is sincere and authentic, and thus unacceptable to the old king. It's in King Lear by Shakespeare, and he took it from an earlier from a folktale. So it's almost an archetypal tale type. But Sudha, what I really want to say is your storytelling has really developed. Years ago, you would tell a story, it seemed to me, just to give the information. But it's not like that. Every sentence was meaningful. And you phrased each sentence in a unique way. And you expressed emotion by the characters, about the characters. It was a great development in you.
Thank you.
I think, as Eric was saying, you were not full of emotions and moving around, but yet you held on to the audience at least. I think you really hold us on together through your telling. Thoroughly enjoyed that. As I said,
I had to do what works for me. No, I had to do what works for me, Pratigya. I mean, what comes naturally to me.
And it came out beautifully. It's come out very, very beautifully. Really loved it. It's a good variety we had today, while some of us were going, with all of expressions and movement and this and that, and we had someone just sitting back, and just looking really laid back and relaxed, and still holding us on together. Loved it so much.
Your phrasing reminded me of the way Frank Sinatra used to phrase his songs, and he was as one of the most the best actors when he would be singing a song. Writers wrote especially for him because they knew that he would bring out the human element in the song. And you really brought out the human element of the characters in that story.
Thank you, Eric.
As I said, this took me back to another story that I know. This is in the Jain religion, where again, the father throws a question to the daughter saying, what do you believe is the truth? Are you aap karmi or baap karmi? So baap is father. So what you will be, does it depend on what your father does? or does it depend on what you do? And of course, the girl said, it's all aap karmi, which is self. So I decide, or it's only me and my actions and my choices which will decide my future. And the story goes on as to how he gets her married to a completely crippled man, the next beggar crippled man that he can find, and how she finds her way out and a happy ending, and proving it to her father that we decide our future. Nobody else can do that. I think with that note, we can wrap up today's session. I think we're about 5 minutes early, if that's okay, Eric. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for the wonderful show. Thank you to the audience. Thoroughly enjoyed every single story. And we have a workshop right after this. And looking forward to meeting all of you at the next story session for adults at 2 tomorrow, besides 2 India time tomorrow afternoon, besides all the other list of workshops and performances happening. Over to you, Eric.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Pratigya. You did an excellent job hosting. Thank you. Now we'll stop recording.